there's some question about what is love, actually. And I do know some people talk about it in these rather oozy ways, abstract or woozy, larded over with rhetoric or poetic language ways. But I guess I see it as much as you're saying, love of the particular person. When we fell in love, and I went and read all the relationship books because I thought, what is this? I had never experienced anything like this degree of being in love. And they all say all these warnings. You think the person is perfect, and in 6 months you'll learn they're not perfect, and then the love will blow over. Well, I'm still in love just as much today. It was never premised on the idea you were perfect, I'm not perfect. Perfection has nothing to do with it. You love the person as they are. And you don't have to see Christ in their face. You don't have to see Brahman or some other abstract entity. I remember being told that Paul Tillich, the great Christian theologian, said the marriage is about calling one another into being. And I thought, gee, that's an awfully abstract account.
If you're in a health emergency, I would say, yeah, you'd get the person you love to the emergency room of the hospital as quickly as possible so they can stay in being, but not otherwise.
Right. No, that's like mouth-to-mouth resuscitation.
Exactly.
It's not unlike that God having a story, us having stories. Two people in love have a story. You try to live a life together. And so you're in part sharing a story. You have your own individuality and your own projects and so forth. But in part, one of the things you're doing is sharing a story. And that's not just in love. A family has a story, a community has a story, and so forth. Here I am swept up in the whirlwind. You knew Elijah, tell God's story, the most improbable things. What on earth could this have meant to you at that point? Completely, pretty much out of the blue.
Yeah. Well, I puzzled over this and trying to figure out, why was I unfazed? What was going on in my world? I think my unfazedness had something to do with my Jewish attitudes toward God and real life. To come back to the Mount Sinai moment, where in contradistinction to religions that ask you to have faith, it doesn't seem to me that Jews were asked to have faith merely to sign on. We'll do it, and then maybe we'll get a deeper spiritual quality to our doing it. But first, and last, the main thing is, will you do it? And thinking about it just in connection with our conversation, I thought, since I had no reason to think you were nuts, I had no reason to think you were unreasonable, ungrounded, given to ecstatic or wild, enthusiastic fits and starts, you seem to be on the same even keel, pretty much whether there was a voice from Mount Sinai or not. You were still Jerry Martin, you were still the guy I married. So the usual questions, is somebody who claims to be hearing from God in his right mind, or has he gone round the bend, really did not correspond to my sense of you. And so then the question is, what does God want of you? And I was thinking again about the Jewish experience. Being Jewish, as I just said, doesn't seem to involve a particular inner spiritual quality. You might have it or you might not. You might be holy and saintly and filled with the presence of God, or you might just be, not at all, just very ordinary. God can use you if you're willing. And I don't think of Jews as having a Jewish faith or a Jewish religion so much as being in a Jewish situation. And whether you become a Christian or a Buddhist or an atheist, whatever you are, you're still in a Jewish situation.
But what do you mean by you're still in a Jewish situation?
You have inherited a relationship with God that first occurred in real historical time and has been remembered and recorded, and people view you in the light of that inheritance. And you might even be a great reductionist or great humanist and say nothing like that ever happened. There's still a biblical record, and people still treat you as if it had happened for good or evil. And so you're in that situation, and there's a question, how do you behave rightly and honorably, given that you can't change the situation you've been put in, that you didn't necessarily choose to be put in? And there's a great question of doing it right. You know, how do you do this correctly, since you're in it anyway? And so my sense that you'd been told, now that you'd had this God encounter, that there was something you were supposed to do and do correctly, that seemed to me to follow quite naturally from the fact of the encounter. It's not just you're going to be blissed out. Excuse me, honey, I have to take time out, go to my study, and have a blissful time alone with God. You know, all right. You know, some people like classical music, some people like being alone with God, but that wasn't the kind of thing the God I know about does. The God I know about wants you to do something. And so I wasn't surprised. If this is an authentic meeting between you and God, so the barriers of whatever kind, theory of knowledge, psychological, this can't be happening, I'm a modern man. But if that's all cleared away and you really have a Q&A going on with God, God will want you to do something. And what are you? You're an intellectual. You've been a philosophy professor. You know what it is to be a cultured man, to be a thinking man. God will want you to do something like that. You're not Martha Graham. He won't want you to invent a new modern dance style or, be an acrobat or something else. He'll want you to do what you do. So it seemed to me in a funny way, and people might think this is odd, what can I do about that? It seemed to me quite natural.
Interesting. It seemed to be one implication of what you're saying, Abigail, is that in a way one shouldn't worry over belief systems so much. Do I believe in God? Do I not believe in God? If I'm inclined to believe in God, what kind of God? And can I find arguments, one way or another? But it's much more, well, you're living a life, you're in real situations, you're developing your own story, which is, or you're living it as if it were being recorded and viewed from afar. It makes more sense than worrying about all of that. And can you have the ultimate spiritual experience of X, Y, Z? And just think, what am I supposed to be doing? Maybe even, what am I supposed to be doing today? I'm sometimes told that's my only job, do today what I'm supposed to be doing. And if you're doing that in the right way with regard to the people you affect in your situation, then you're working with God, whatever you call yourself, whatever your label. You're filling out your story and maybe helping fill out God's story. It's like a marriage, you're doing a story together.
Atypical as it might be to talk about it or record it as you've done, it may be much more common than is widely acknowledged. It might not be that rare.